Loss comes in many forms, and usually in unexpected ways. It can be devastating, leaving you facing an uphill struggle to go on with life without someone you thought would always be there. But life does go on, and even in the deepest despair, we can find hope. Welcome to Grief Relief with your hosts, Doctors Gloria and Heidi Horsley, brought to you by the Open to Hope Foundation, helping people find hope after loss. And now here's Dr. Gloria and Dr. Heidi.
Welcome to the Grief Relief Show. I'm your host, Dr. Gloria Horsley, with my co-host and daughter, Dr. Heidi Horsley.
Hi, Mom.
Hi. Well, we got a great show today. We've got such an important topic. We're going to be talking about forgiveness today. So we've got Fred Luskin on, and he's with the Forgiveness Project in Stanford. And you know, Heidi, Fred's really been there. He's lost a daughter in an automobile accident, and his wife died several years ago. So he's a person who's been there and knows what he's talking about. And besides that, he has got such a rich history of talking about forgiveness. Welcome, Dr. Fred Luskin.
Hi. Hi, Fred.
Hi there.
We're so glad to have you on the show today because, as I said to you earlier when we were talking, forgiveness seems to be a place where people get stuck, particularly when they've had a loss. There are people that they're angry at. They're angry at doctors. They're angry at hospices. They're angry at other family members. I mean, they're angry at people who were driving the car when somebody was killed. They're angry, you know, there are just so many angers. And I see, Heidi and I do a lot with the Compassionate Friends, and we see people way out there, maybe 10 years, they're still talking about what somebody did to them.
And they also get really angry at the idea or concept or even word forgiveness.
Yeah.
That's true.
Right. Oh, I'm not going to forgive. I don't have to forgive. Don't tell me that.
I've had many people say, your ideas are good. I wish you had a better name for it. I don't like forgiveness. There's something very challenging about thinking that I myself can be harmed, and yet down the road that's not going to be my story anymore, that I'm not going to identify around it. And one of the ways we resist that is by blaming people and by just holding on tight to our pain. And forgiveness is, you know, and I've had to do it myself, is this way of saying, like, really painful things happen, and then you move on, because life moves on.
Is there a time frame with forgiveness? You know, if how long do I have to, when do I have to forgive?
Yeah.
Well, you have to forgive when you die, because it all goes away anyway.
Right.
Up until then, you have some choice. In the deeper question that you're asking is different offenses require more time depending upon the degree of harm that's been done. So if somebody cuts you off on the freeway, you may be angry legitimately for 10 seconds. If somebody fires you from a job, you may be angry for, 10 days. If somebody really harms you, again, hurts one of your children, the legitimate anger may be 6 months or a year or so. But after a while, unfortunately, because of the way our brain is wired, if we continue to repeat the same old thoughts and feelings of how terrible it is, they create pathways that we can't get out of. And then we become a prisoner of our own negativity.
And those are really neurological pathways that can be seen. Can they be seen when the brain's lit up?
I don't know if you can see the pathways, but you can see different areas light up depending on the intensity of certain things. Pathways is a sense of understanding that neurons in our brain coordinate to activate depending on the kind of stimulus. So if you're happy, then it's a certain sequence of neurons. If you're angry, it's a different sequence. But once you have an embedded sequence, the purpose is to make it so you don't have to think much about it and you can just get upset about it. So if I don't like you and I see you, I don't want to have to think every time what you did that's terrible. So my brain quickly, almost instantaneous, remembers Heidi bad and gets me upset.
Well, and I think one of the issues with that would be, I would imagine if you're in that negativity, it would wreak havoc on your relationships and on your health.
Yeah, on both.
Okay.
And the simplest way of understanding it in terms of health is that every time you have that response, your body's under tremendous stress. And stress just wears out whatever part of your body is the weakest. The more subtle thing is on your relationships, both with your relationship to yourself and your relationship to other people. but even more deeply on your relationship to life. That if I've been harmed and I can't get past it, then one, I feel a loss of power in myself, that I couldn't cope with something. But two, I carry around a sense of mistrust, that somehow life is going to continue to harm me and I can't deal with it. And so both of those are very corrosive.
Okay, now I'm hearing you and I'm thinking, I am angry and somebody's, the hospital, or somebody was driving a car, or somebody hit one of my family members. Maybe it's been a while, and maybe it's time that I thought about this process. And I was just looking on your website. I know you have a lot of points on forgiveness. And can you talk about, I was really struck by one where you said that forgiveness isn't necessarily reconciliation.
Right. They're two separate things. Forgiveness is an inner kind of quality of letting go. Reconciliation involves another person. So you can forgive somebody and never see them, and you can move back into their house and still hate them. So they're independent constructs.
And so if I don't have to reconcile with them.
No. And in fact, sometimes it's smarter not to.
Oh, you mean I can forgive them without reconciling?
Sometimes it's not safe.
Right. Okay.
The most poignant examples of those I get often are like 23-year-old women who finally get out of an abusive father's home and know they have to let this stuff go to be able to move on and have a life, but they still don't feel safe going back to dad. Right. And that's totally legit.
Right. And you don't have to work that out. No. You don't have to go back.
I mean, you don't have to find them. You have to keep yourself safe as well as open-hearted.
So is it really forgiving the person or forgiving the act? I'm confused. Is it?
Sometimes it's just forgiving life for being what it is. Unpredictable, dangerous at times, like insensitive to what we want. Sometimes it's just that. Sometimes it's, if you have a relationship with somebody, it's grappling with how could they do this. And sometimes it's an act or a specific thing that's so difficult and so harsh that you have to come to grips with that. There's no one experience of it.
Okay, this is helpful for me because I just think of I'm going to take 9/11 as an example since I live in New York and have been immersed with working with the firefighter families. They just felt like there was no way they could ever forgive the terrorists.
I understand.
But it sounds like that's not, they can still be in forgiveness without forgiving the terrorists, right? Is that true?
If they're stuck on forgiving the terrorists and they make a conscious, or they're taught to, just leave the terrorists alone, but forgive life. Just forgive the fact that life has suffering and difficulty that you don't understand, and let it go.
I like this idea.
Yeah, I
forgiving life.
Yep. Yeah. Now, one of the things you talked about, too, is as soon as you get upset, you can practice a stress technique. Yeah. What is it?
Yeah, I want
to see this. It doesn't matter, but the easiest one is just to take a couple of breaths, slow breaths.
And I notice you're holding your stomach. Do I want to do that?
Yeah, just allow your belly to relax and breathe a little more deeply.
Okay.
And open your belly when you breathe. So not this, but that.
Like that. Okay. Kind of sticking it out.
And if you want to make it deeper, just while you're breathing like this, just think of someone you love. Just picture someone you love while you're breathing.
I like that.
And you calm down.
And you're saying immediately, as soon as you feel it coming on.
And from the explanation is you're counter-conditioning the stress response. So since we have neural pathways that link our distress and something painful, we have a conditioned response. The second that painful thing comes up, and what you're doing is counter-conditioning that. You're pairing the stimulus now with a pleasant response, and the conditioned response goes away.
Yeah, and just practice doing that. I like the idea as soon as you get upset. And then you were talking about, also I was reading about giving up expecting things from other people or from life.
The key word is expectation.
Okay.
When I expect anything to just be the way I want it to be, the world doesn't conform to that. And that's actually at the basis of unforgiveness. The world didn't give me what I expected. That's the key issue of forgiveness.
Okay.
And one last thing I liked was where you said amend your grievance story to talk about your heroic activities. Talk about that a little bit.
At this point now, I understand that forgiveness is simply coming up with a different story. to talk about your own life. So one story is, that person was terrible, they meant to hurt me, it was awful, I don't know what the heck was wrong with them, I hate them. You have a story like that. You just have to shift the story a little bit into people hurt each other. I was slammed. I had no idea what to do with it. I'm learning how to deal with it. I wish they hadn't done it. People do all sorts of sick and crazy things. I've got to let this go. That's just a shift of story. I now understand that that's what forgiveness is. It's changing the story.